Hi everyone, so welcome back to a new episode on our banking CLI application. Okay, so in our last episode, we implemented our transaction pin feature, and what this does basically is when a new user logs in, okay, or when an existing user logs in, we do a check to confirm if their pin is set. Okay, if their pin isn't set, okay, then we direct them to the transaction pin setup page. Okay, so basically what that does is we do a check to see if the current account is set. So this is some kind of session. Okay, so once we do a check, and this function redirects to the login page if the session doesn't exist, kind of like a protection there, right? So if it does exist, we check the pin to see if the pin has been set. If the pin has been set, we return to the caller function. Okay. Else we continue. So what we do, we receive the new pin from the user. So we added the validation. We check to see if it's exactly 4 digits and if it's numeric as well. So once we get that, we do a check to see if the two pins supplied by the user is correct. If it is, we proceed. If it isn't, we keep the user in this loop till they provide the correct pin, right? And once they do so, we hash the pin, we update the pin, okay, with the account entity, and if everything is fine, we update the session data, and then we show the user that a successful message that the pin was set, and we render the dashboard. Right. So in this feature, we're going to work on, in this episode, we're going to work on this render dashboard function or feature. Right. So let's proceed. So before we do that, in our last episode, we mentioned we have some improvements we're going to do. So first, when navigating to a new screen, we need to clear the content of the previous screen from the UI. What that means. So let's say, let's run an app. So you can see this is the start screen, right? So let's navigate to login. So you can see the details of the start screen is still on the screen. We want to do something similar to clear so that there will be new um, canvas uh, for the next page's UI to render onto the screen, right? So let's do that. Um, should we do? uh, All right. So how can we how can we do this functionality? Now, there's actually a way to get the current to call this clear function from PHP. There's a function to do that, okay? And that's called system, okay? So if you check the php.net docs, there's a function called system. You can pass in an operating system command and it will run that command. Okay, but you should be very careful when using such a function so that you don't allow users to supply a command to your system function. So you should make it static. Only call functions you specify and not allow a user to execute code against your server, right? So how can we do this? So basically, we want to implement something like clear. Okay, I want to call the clear function, okay, from PHP, but there is a small issue. So clear function works only on Linux and Mac, but it doesn't work on Windows. Windows has a CLS function which does the same thing as CLI, but we can't execute this on Linux, okay, or on Mac. So I want to have a way to clear this pin in a platform agnostic way, okay. So let's do that. So we need a way to know the current OS, okay, and from there we'll know whether to execute the CLS command or the clear command. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a new function to our CLI helper. I'm going to call it clear screen. What this function would do, first we would get the current OS. So there is a constant we can use to get the current OS. So before we proceed, let's do some checks. I don't think we need this part of the code. So let's remove that. I'm going to comment this. So let's do echo PHP OS. Right? Okay, so this shows us our current operating system, right? PHP, let's do PHP EOL. It looks a bit nice, right? But then there is also a PHP OS family function that was introduced, I think, PHP 7.1 or 7.2, I think 7.2, we can use to do the same thing. So it's actually recommended to use the PHP OS family. I'm not sure why, but um, I know this is the recommended way, okay, to use it. So this will give us that um, check, right? So how do we know? So now we know this is Linux, but I'm not executing this on a Windows or on a Mac. So how do we know if it's a Windows or a Mac PC? So we have different constants for this. So we have Linux maps to Linux OS, right? We have Windows, which maps to Windows OS, and we have Darwin, which maps to Mac OS, right? So with this, we can use that to do our check. So let's um, implement that. So where were we? Right. So let's do um, let's say command. Let's do a switch. Or we could use a match expression to do that. So we can say match PHP OS family. And then for this, we can see if Linux and Darwin, right? Then we do right. Else if it's Windows, or since Windows is going to be the default, then we do CLS, right? Yeah. Mm. Or let's do Windows. We might be executing PHP on an unsupported hardware. Who knows? So we'll say default. Let's just make it null, right? Then if it's null, we'll do just to confirm this match function eludes me sometimes. So let's do match, right? the match expression. So this is how it works. Okay, okay. So actually on point. Okay, so if command is not null, then we call the system function to execute the command, which is basically just pass what is in the command here, right? So that's basically what we'll be doing. Okay, so let's try that. Let's print this and we'll call, okay, so let me duplicate this, right? Just to test. Okay, so right now we can see two Linuxes. So if we put a clear screen between these two outputs, we should have only one Linux. So this will be printed, the screen should be cleared, and this should be printed next. Right, so let's do CLI helper clear screen. All right, as you can see, we have it actually got cleared. Okay, we have only one output now, so this will be useful for application. So let's update the places we need those changes. Let's do, mm, okay, so we'll put them just before we render the screen. I'm going to do it here. Also going to do it here. I'm going to do it here as well. And for whatever reason, we could do it at the start because we might have input here already. So as you can see, if we were to just run this now, okay, I haven't commented out the menu manager. As you can see, we could see our previous commands. Yeah, so want it to be a fresh screen. So once we add that, should make our application much nicer to work with. Yeah. All right. So let's see. So we're done with this. Done. And yeah, we should refactor all our error message output to use the CLI print error function. So let's do that. Um, I think we should start with our validator. Let's see. Okay, here we could just do this, right? Yeah, and yeah, we could do this here. Mm, let's see. We're using, remember, we are within the CLI helper class, so we could use self here. Okay, so self is fine. Okay, so let's remove this. Let's remove this and let's use that print error. Okay, all right. Let's see. Is there any place we need to add that? Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Mm, okay. Do we need to do such here? Mm, let's remove this. Don't think we need it. Let's see. see, actually, we need it here too. Validation. So let's try again. Let me see how it looks before we actually running our application. Great. So we have a bug. The error message didn't show up because we cleared the screen and we called start. Okay, so maybe we should put this in a while loop. Okay, and then as soon as we get into this, we'll break out of the loop, right? Um, yeah, I think that should work out well. So let's do well, true, right? Then let's see. We remove this, put this here, and then so this should, if this breaks out of the loop here, it is called a function. I don't think it will. Let's do one. Yeah, it will. So could be tricky. Hmm. Okay, so if we take you here, then it brings you back to the banking CLI application. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Mm, but then it doesn't. It shouldn't it render this? Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Alright, so let's so okay, let's replace that and message. Alright. Okay, maybe we might want to have a success here, but we'll do it later. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Let's do that here. Okay, so that's if I'm called. Okay, we already used this here, so that's fine. Right, I think that's good. So we can focus on our render dashboard screen, which is, where is it actually? Alright, so what should we have here? So we want to have some kind of menu. We want to be able to do fund transfer, that's major thing. Transfer history and also settings that would contain change PIN and change password feature. Right, so let's do that. So we're going to do something similar to what we have here. All right. So we can actually copy that. Okay, and go to, let's see here. Mm, okay, so let's take this, replace this. Right. Okay, so let's do one for um, make a transfer. Yeah, we need to also have a way to check balance. Okay, I don't know how I didn't include that. Also add an account info page. Uh, Maybe we could do that. Um, Maybe we could do that here. Implement count info feature. Right. So make a transfer. Let's start with that. Account information. Then make a transfer. Mm, helper, right line, free transaction history. And then lastly, settings, right? Right line, settings. Do we need these dots? I think we do. Yeah. Right, save option is one. We could use a switch case with this. There's also something we could use. So having multiple if else every time, especially now that we have more than one function or more than one, sorry, more than two menu entries. So let's check the syntax switch. Okay, so this is how it works. We do a case, we break, and we have a default case. Here you have a default. Right, so let's do a switch. I think I'll keep this for our default case. We don't want to type it again. All right, so let's switch. So we'll say option, right? Yeah. So if case is one, what do we want to do? So say self, let's say render account information. Okay. Uh, so we'll create that function here, private static function render account information, right? Mm, right, then we break, okay, on case two, self, make a transfer, so one transfer, right? One transfer. Now, account lookup won't need a separate screen. It's actually going to be part of the fund transfer since normally we won't do account lookup just for the sake of account lookup, right? So we'll remove that. So say when the functions when the fund transfer, okay, now break case three, self render transaction history, if that's how we spelled it, break. Let's see. I would could have renamed it as function to serve for settings. So we just create it again. No problem. So self render render settings. Great. And then default would be less. So then when we do break here, okay, I hope it breaks out of the switch, not out of the loop. Alright, so default, then we fall back to this and then it repeats. But then, how do we break out of the loop? if we're navigating. Okay, yeah, that works. Okay, so yep, I think we're good. So let's see how that works now. PHP name, PHP login, Mary, picture, gmail.com. Yeah, okay, that is successful. Let's continue. Beautiful. All right, so let's do an invalid option. Great. So it shows that, but note that it doesn't take us, doesn't clear the screen. So we need to kind of clear the screen after this. So maybe we can do the class screen here at the top. But then if we do that, we won't have a error message. Hmm. What if we do the class screen here? Yeah, that was mm, mm, we need to really look into this. Moving, mm, let's see, maybe the draw is gone. Yeah, so let's do wrong entry, valid option, please try again. All right. So let's do one. Okay, so there was nothing there, so basically it took us back, which is fine. But then that's the issue though. When we come back, we would need to clear the screen if that's the last thing we are doing in that function. Hmm. Okay, we'll look into that. All right, so we're through with our dashboard um, feature. Right? Did we even create the render settings function? We did it, right? So imagine we had done that, we would have gotten an error if we try to call a function that didn't exist. Yeah, and that's one of the advantages of compiling languages. When you make such a mistake, you get errors during compilation, so you can act on it. Okay, but we had to reach this line before PHP knew that, shoot, this function doesn't exist. Right. So, anyways, let's create it. Yeah, yeah, that was a bit lazy, but I've saved ourselves a few keystrokes, right? So, right, so this is for the settings. So, we're through with this. This is done, and this is done. All right. So while doing this, let's implement our account lookup feature. Or okay, let's do that in the next episode. Alright, see you guys in the next one.